Gary Brown here again, and it's time for another experiment on the Cobb Grill. Today we'll be making some barbecue pork ribs. I've got the ribs here, picked them up today, and I've got all my seasonings, my rub right here. I probably should have done the dry rub last night, but I didn't have the meat then, so we're only going to get probably about, I'd say maybe 2-3 hours on the rub before I put them on the Cobb Grill. And this is going to be a bit of an experiment because I'm going to be using the vertical rack on the grill to do the cooking. And of course I should mention we are filming in the palatial porch of my house with the urban neighborhood sounds in the background. So it will be what it will be. Well, the first thing we're going to do, and this is a nice good size hunk of meat. Pork seems to be really on sale right now. Now, there is some debate about this. This is the back side of the rib, and you can see that we've got a membrane right here. There is debate as to whether or not you should pull this membrane off. The one school of thought says leave it on, makes things a little bit crispier. Another school of thought says, no, you want to take that off. It will stop the rub from getting down to the meat. So, I think what I'm going to do, as part of the experiment, and this is a pain in the neck to say the least. You can see I'm getting the knife underneath there, doing a little trimming. I'm going to trim half of this off, leave half of it on, and we'll see when we do the cooking how the flavor comes out. So, first step, remove the membrane from half of the ribs. Now got the ribs, well, I decided partway through it, removing the membrane is a real pain in the neck. So what I've done is, to get that rub in there, I've scored the meat right in here with my nice sharp knife. Remember, these are these Rada knives, R-A-D-A, and you should really, really check them out. In the same way that Cobb Grill is such a just gorgeously engineered piece of cooking equipment, these Rada knives, same thing. Incredible bargain, incredible. You know, people compare the quality of the cut to those $100 German knives, and the things only cost about $30, lifetime guarantee. Check them out. As Alton Brown would say, they don't pay me to say this, I just really like these things. I've got one set for the house, and I got another set that I've got out in the Scamp trailer. Well, what I'm going to be doing is mixing together our rubs here, but first what I want to do is cut this into some manageable pieces so I can stack them inside the grill. So we'll just do some slicing here. Look at that, just like butter. When I'm cutting, I'm trying to cut right along the bone so that I get a nice full portion of meat there. And that looks good. So, spice rubs. Start out here, since this one is mostly empty, 1 teaspoon of ginger. This is a tablespoon of garlic, tablespoon of my beloved coriander, teaspoon of chipotle peppers, and a teaspoon of smoked paprika. Secret ingredient, teaspoon of super finely ground espresso coffee. Caffeinated or not, your choice. 2 tablespoons brown sugar. And a tablespoon of salt. We'll just put those in there, and fingers work really good for mixing this thing. You're going to be using your fingers on the meat anyway, so you may as well just mix things. You want to get fancy, pour them back and forth. Pretend you're a chemist kind of a person. And there we've got nice spice rub. I'll stack these out of the way here. And clear the cutting board. And what I'll be doing is spicing this up and then just stacking them up on the cutting board, I guess, right there. So just take the rub on the meat, rub it in. That's why they call it a rub, you know. Both sides, and hopefully these little slices I've made here let the rub penetrate a little bit inside of there. Make sure you get the edges here too. You want this rubbed all over. And we'll just do these one by one. You know, and with rubs, the two things you're really looking for are salt. That's going to let the rub penetrate into the meat. And the brown sugar, give it a little bit of sweetness, and it'll also help caramelize the surface, brown the meat. Now remember, the browning is not sealing in the juices. I mean, we looked at all the old cookbooks, and they always talked about first sear the meat to make sure you seal in the juices. It doesn't do anything to seal in the juices. Not particularly at all. What it does is that caramelization gives you that nice crust on the outside. It's what makes a piece of barbecued, piece of grilled meat taste so good. Just pat that in there nicely. Of course, when you get the ribs in the big package, and this was only about, I think this was about $9 at the local big box grocery store. But they always had these little bits and pieces stuck on the end, which are somewhat difficult to cook, and they can provide some really, really tasty eating. The rub here, and I don't quite know if we're going to get much of a yield out of these guys or not, but what the heck, work them up. That's why we have nice sharp teeth. Pick these things. These are not eat them with a knife and a fork sort of a thing. I'll just run this along here, pick up the rub, finish it off a little bit left, and through some amazing miracle, there's the last bit of the rub. So now we have the meat all rubbed. And take a paper towel, get the hands cleaned a little bit so I can get at the wrapper. So we're going to seal these things up in some cling wrap here. I always go pretty much for the least expensive chunk of cling wrap that I can get. Stretch it out there, put a little counterweight so it doesn't roll back. Put a couple of chunks here. Just start folding that up. Roll it out. Another piece here. Another piece here. And there goes the box. Keep rolling up. Last piece. Roll it up. And we'll just roll these in the pouch here. Do a 90-degree twist. See if I can manage to get these all nicely sealed up. So what I'm going to do is take these, put them in a Ziploc bag. throw them in the refrigerator for a couple of hours. There we go. Starting out, first phase, got the dry rub on the pork. I'll be starting up the grill in a couple of hours, and one of the experiments I'm going to be doing is trying to slow things down. Best way to cook ribs, low and slow. You want to end up with something that's going to be nice and moist but not dried out. So that means putting liquid into the moat. And I think what I'm going to do is actually put a little bit of aluminum foil on one or two of the vents on top to slow down that cooking. I'm also going to be doing a double charcoal method that I learned on my big Weber grill. I'm going to try to duplicate that on the Cobb to see if we can extend the cooking time without having to take the top off. Remember, every time you take that top off, you dump heat and you extend the amount of time you're going to be just waiting for things to warm up again. So we'll let this sit in the refrigerator for a couple of hours, and when we're back, we'll be looking at the grill. The meat has been going in the refrigerator now for, about an hour and a half, 2 hours. And I'm going to get the grill prepped now. I'm going to be trying an experiment. First time I've ever used the chunk charcoal. I've been using coconut briquettes for a while, and they're good, but they just don't seem to have a big enough heat. So I'm going to work with these charcoal chunks. But I'm going to be doing something a little bit different so we get a long fire, and you'll see what that is in a minute. So let's get the fire starters started. And put our put our charcoal chunks on. So while that is going, what I'm going to be doing make up our smoke packet. A couple of sheets of aluminum foil or aluminium foil if you prefer, and you want something a little bit heavier gauge. This is a little bit thin, so I'm using 2 sheets of it. What I've done is I've taken chunks of oak branches out of our yard. We've been having a lot of wind lately, and these just came down. Now notice I have not soaked these. When you soak them, you soak the wood chips. What happens is it takes a while for them to start smoking. Studies have shown in a recent issue of the Cook's magazine, Cook's or Cook's Country, I can't remember which one it was in, they did a study in their usual exhaustive way. And they found out that most of the smoke goes into the meat just in the first half an hour of cooking. After that, not too much. So what they've realized was what you want is to get the maximum amount of smoke into that meat as quickly as you can. By not soaking the wood, that gets the wood starting to smoke a lot quicker. The second thing is, when I put the meat in, I'm going to put it in pretty much straight out of the refrigerator. I'm not going to let it warm up, because what you want to have happen is the smoke elements will condense on the meat as quickly as possible. The warm meat doesn't condense as quickly. Cold meat, better condensation. So what we're going to do here is we're going to seal this up. And get that going like that. Now we don't want it to just smoke instantly. Well, we don't want it to just pour out smoke. We do want it to go for a while. So what we're going to do is just cut a couple of slits in this thing. And that should do it. When we're ready to go with the fire here, we'll put this on along with a couple of more coals, because what we want to have happen is that these coals initially will get going, and then what will happen is as they burn down, the second set of coals will be starting to burn, and they'll provide a continuous heat. So we'll let that go, and the coals should be ready in, I would say probably about 10 or 15 minutes. The coals look like they have a pretty good start now. I should mention I've got water in the moat here. So that'll be giving some moisture while the ribs are cooking. What I'm going to be doing here is we'll be moving some of these off to the side here, kind of making a secondary spot right there, make that a little bit lower, and we'll just dump in a little bit more charcoal right here, and this stuff will get going. Now here's that smoke packet that I made up a little earlier. We'll put that down right here, and that looks like the roasting pan will clear that. Okay, I'll just put some more charcoal over here. So we're going to let this cook for a couple of hours. I want a good heat, but I also want this not to go crazy. I don't want it too hot. So we're going to see what sort of a temperature we end up at. Now I don't want to have to open this thing up again. And that's why I'm putting all these coals. So theoretically, what should happen is this thing will produce a goodly amount of heat. We'll get everything going nicely. Then as the old coals burn down, the new coals start, and this smoke packet should start going off. So I'm going to move the grill to the back, and we'll look at how I'm going to set the meat up, and then we'll put the meat in the grill, and away we'll go. We've got the meat out of the refrigerator now. You can see that the rub looks like it's done its job. The meat feels great. Now what I've done here is I've taken the Cobb roasting rack, and rather than hooking it straight onto the cooking surface like you normally do, I put it onto the secondary assembly that you sit in there. I'm doing that so I can lift the meat up. I want smoke to get underneath the pieces that I'm going to be laying on the bottom here. So here's the normal surface, and we'll get that in there nicely. So what I'm going to do is take these pieces, the chunky bits, kind of scatter them around underneath here on the grate so that they get the smoke. They're not cooking directly. So we're just putting that, just kind of scattering them around there. Now what I'm going to do, take our other meat, the ribs proper, kind of stick them up here. Well, we've got them. Oh, they're making a little tent here out of these things. Hopefully the lid will shut on these. And always cooking by temperature. So let's get ourselves powered up here, and we'll look for a nice meaty bit. Stick it in there. Do this from the bottom so we don't get the top poking in the way. Meat sitting, 60 and change. And let's assemble the grill. A little tricky here with this on there, but we should be able to get her in. There we go. That's sitting on top. The other thing, need this, the extension ring. Need the thermometer through here. Put the extension ring on. That fits nicely. Put our lid on top. And that appears to more or less fit on there okay. And now, we just wait. The meat has only been going for about 10 minutes, but if we look at the temperature gauge here, we can see that we are already up to 117 degrees. So this thing is going pretty fast. So what I've done here at the top, I've made some little plugs out of foil and popped them in there. Hopefully that'll cut down the airflow a little bit and maybe slow down the cooking. We shall see. It's been about 2 hours now. The meat has been cooking nicely. I've been adding and subtracting the little aluminum plugs up on the top to try to control the temperature. You can see we're at about 172 degrees right now. And let's lift the lid off and see what it looks like. Crikey! That is some nice looking meat right now. It's been slowly cooking. And going to take it off there, put it aside, and let the meat rest for about 15 or 20 minutes. So we'll just grab it, slab at a time. And there's our temperature probe. Chunks of meat that we had at the bottom. If we look down here, off to the side, there's our barbecue pork. Gonna let that rest for a while and take a look at it when we're all done. And there we have it, plated on some of my glasswork. There's the ribs, there's the bits that were the end chunks, the main part of the ribs. Nice brown mahogany type finish on them. I have to admit, I tasted one of the small pieces and it's really good. So, about 2.5 hours, I'd say, from the time I put them in the grill until the time they were finished. If they'd had a little bit longer on the dry rub, the flavor would have been even more intense. And there's still a number of pieces of the chunk charcoal unburned in there. So I probably could have used a few fewer pieces of the charcoal. All in all, I think this experiment should be judged a success. Another great meal on the Cobb Grill.